Our top story this morning, the National Weather Service reports that the Clark Fork River has dropped below 10 feet, but is expected to rise again as warm temperatures and rain are expected over the weekend. Meteorologist Luke Robinson has these details.
The Clark Fork above Missoula has lowered down to action stage, so we are currently below 10 feet at 9.69, and we'll continue to see that lower until probably late Saturday going into Sunday.
Robinson said the river will begin to rise again this weekend.
Due to the warmer temperatures over the weekend with warmer nighttime temperatures and expected rainfall during that time period is when we're expecting it to continue to, we'll see it begin rising again, and it will continue to rise for several days.
Robinson said there's still flooding in the Seeley Lake area, which will continue with the warmer temperatures. As of 10 o'clock this morning, the Missoula County Commissioners will sign an emergency declaration due to the flooding of the Clark Fork and other county waterways. Communications and Special Projects Director Ann Hughes provides these details.
It allows for incident commanders in the field to have the authority to close roads and prevent access to areas or order evacuations. Of course, that's only if it's really necessary for public safety. It allows the county to request resources from the state or other agencies through mutual aid or through a contract for assistance.
Hughes said the emergency declaration enables the county to pave the way for more help if it's needed.
And it also gives us the ability to start tracking the impacts to the county and our residents. So if we're going to determine if local, state, or federal disaster declaration is warranted, this allows us to start kind of tracking that and set that in motion.
The National Weather Service says the Clark Fork has slipped below flood stage for now, but that river levels will rise this weekend, as we just heard, into the next week. The flood warning continues until further notice. Yesterday, the Montana Legislative Fiscal Division released its fifth of 6 general fund revenue estimates as the state nears the end of the fiscal year. The estimates display a high, low, and medium projection for state revenues. Curiously, all 3 of those estimates are above where Governor Bullock's office predicted they would be late last year. Those dire forecasts are what led to this special legislative session, a session that House Appropriations Chair Nancy Balance says was clearly unnecessary.
We believed it was unnecessary. We believed all along that the revenue was going to come back up, and at the very least it was premature. If the governor had waited another couple of months, what he would have seen is these revenue numbers starting to come back up and some indications that maybe things were going to be fine.
The session triggered state cuts, and those cuts have made a big impact on services throughout Montana, most notably in areas such as direct care. Balance says that if revenues come in as they appear to be, those cuts may be filled in a few months.
We actually anticipated that the revenue was going to be back up. So in Senate Bill 9 during the special session, we put some very specific rules in place to take the additional revenue if it was above a certain amount and put it right back into the programs from which it was taken. That'll trigger as soon as the revenue is audited and verified, which will be August.
Charts released this week compare 4 different projection models, which were made back before the special session, 3 of which predicted state revenues to pull in a little more than $2,400 million, very close to what the new data indicates is coming in. The executive branch predicted revenues to be about $100 million below that, an estimate that, in hindsight, appears to have been way off the mark. Officials with the State Revenue Department say they processed tax returns and got refunds out to taxpayers more quickly this year, in part because they have an improved system for detecting fraudulent returns. Steve Austin, Administrator of Citizen Services, told members of the Revenue and Transportation Committee yesterday that the agency processed returns seeking refunds first. The average turnaround time from electronically filing a state return to receiving a refund was 7 days this year, compared to 10.8 days last year. So far, the agency has caught attempts to fraudulently claim $192,000 in refunds. Last year, the agency prevented $4.48 million in fraudulent refunds. Austin says the number was so high because one return sought a $4.2 million refund. It was submitted and rejected several times. Austin said the state will continue to be vigilant. Yellowstone National Park spokesman Neil Herbert confirmed yesterday the park has had its first bison injury of 2018.
On Tuesday afternoon, May 1st, a woman was hiking on a trail, sort of behind Old Faithful and came around the blind spot and ended up being closer to a bison than I'm guessing she wanted to be. And unfortunately, that bison dropped its head and charged her and pushed her off the trail before she was able to get to a safe place or put some distance between her and the animal.
The woman has been identified as 72-year-old Virginia Junk of Boise, Idaho. A follow-up report indicates the bison struck her in the thigh as it tossed her off the trail.
Rangers responded to the scene and treated some minor injuries, and then they did transport her by ambulance to a hospital in Rexburg, Idaho. I mean, the fact of the matter is, bison are present around Old Faithful year-round, so this kind of thing can happen anytime. Of the 5 we had in 2015, maybe the first one occurred sort of in the May-ish time frame.
Last year, there was only one bison visitor injury in the park. Herbert says most of the park is covered in snow right now, but the east entrance is expected to open on Friday, and the north entrance is already open. Environmentalists say a Trump administration proposal to ease restrictions on energy leases and other activities on Western lands could unravel efforts to protect an imperiled bird. Interior Department officials yesterday released draft changes to conservation plans for the greater sage grouse in 7 states. The protections were approved in 2015 under former President Obama. The ground-dwelling chicken-sized birds are known for an elaborate mating ritual. Their numbers declined sharply in recent decades, due in part to oil and gas drilling that drove them off their breeding grounds. Administration officials say the proposed revisions to the Obama-era plans are aimed at increasing flexibility in the management of lands where the birds reside. And Montana's campaign contribution limits will stay in place for the June 5th primary elections after a federal appeals court decided against revisiting the issue. The 9th U.S. Circuit Court said yesterday it would not reconsider its October ruling upholding contribution limits for state races. The decision is part of a long-running lawsuit over claims that Montana's limits are so low that they restrict donors' free speech rights. The 9th Circuit ruled the limits prevent corruption or the appearance of corruption. That means donors this year can give no more than $180 per election to candidates in legislative, public service commission, or other state races. Donors to U.S. House and Senate races, or candidates rather, are capped at $2,700 per election under federal limits. Our News Talk time now, 6:12.
Newstalk, KGVO.
Missoula's official weather station.
Partly cloudy skies today with our high temperatures in the upper 60s and low 70s. Overnight tonight will drop into the low 40s. Highs will be in the 70s Friday and Saturday with isolated thunderstorms this weekend. I'm meteorologist Brooke Foster for KECI 13.